Hello and welcome back to Bicyclelegs and another edition of Studio Albums Ranked. Today we're going to be looking at the studio discography of the wonderful Porcupine Tree, one of my favourite bands of all time. This one's a little near and dear to my heart because back in 2020 when the pandemic was starting, I was watching a lot of YouTube, and one of the very first, in fact I think the very first album ranking show I ever watched was Sea of Tranquility doing Porcupine Tree. So it was just something that came up in my suggestions. Wasn't something I was actively looking for, but it kind of led me down a rabbit hole that ended up leading to this channel. So wonderful to get around to Porcupine Tree. A bit of a sentimental choice to finally get around to doing this catalogue. As I say, they're one of my favourite bands of all time. We're going to be looking at all 11 of their studio albums, so we're not including any live albums or EPs or compilations or anything like that. It's a difficult catalogue to rank, and I will say this. I first ranked it on a note on my phone, and I've played around with the ranking a couple of times. Then when I went to transfer that note to my notebook, I changed some of the rankings again. And then just as I was setting up to record this video, I changed a couple of the rankings again. So this is really one of those ones where my ranking could change from day to day or even hour to hour, depending on when you ask me. What I will say is I love all of these albums to a lesser or greater extent. Even the ones that are at the very bottom of my list, I still think are really, really good albums. There are no bad albums in the Porcupine Tree catalogue as far as I'm concerned. But let's get into it and start with my number 11, which is the Porcupine Tree debut album from 1992, and that is On the Sunday of Life. Now this is basically the tapes that Steven Wilson had been making in his home studio, pretty much on his own. And then he took the best of what he thought were the best bits of that tape and turned it into this debut Porcupine Tree album. This is very much psychedelia. It's very much almost pastiche in a way. And it's very different from anything else that we would ever hear in the Porcupine Tree catalogue. I mean, you know, songs like Jupiter Island and Linton Samuel Dawson. I mean, just whimsical. You don't expect whimsical from Porcupine Tree. You know, they're always known as being a very serious, very dark sort of sounding band. But on this, there's a lot of silly stuff. It's quite different from anything else in their catalogue, and I love it for that. But at the same time, I just don't feel it's as good as the more serious stuff when he really did start to take Porcupine Tree seriously as a band rather than just something he was messing around with at home. But I mean, obviously this has Radioactive Toy on it as well, which is just, you know, a Porcupine Tree classic to this day. You know, it's a great album, but it is one of a kind in the Porcupine Tree catalogue. So I will understand if some people have this ranked a fair bit higher because it's a really good album. I like the other stuff better. The next album is going to be my number 10, and we are going to be going all the way to 2009 for their second to last album as of today, and that is The Incident. This is sort of at the tail end of that prog metal sort of era of Porcupine Tree. Porcupine Tree have sort of 3 or 4 different eras as far as their sound goes. And, you know, this is, you know, the sort of 4th album in that sort of progressive metal kind of period of Porcupine Tree. And I like the other sort of prog metal albums better. You'll see that as the ranking goes along, that some of them are ranked a fair bit higher. I like this album quite a bit. I know a lot of people rate this album a lot higher, and I get that. I think the concept is quite good, but I feel like the actual piece, The Incident, which is, 54 minutes or something like that. Could have been a little bit shorter. I'm not one to, edit progressive bands. I love long tracks. I love sidelong epics and all that sort of thing. I love The Whirlwind by Transatlantic, which is nearly 80 minutes long. I just feel like this could have done with a little bit of editing. But the bits that are good are really, really good. I mean, Occam's Razor is wonderful, I think, as a song. Time Flies, just incredible. And then it ends with the absolutely gorgeous I Drive the Hearse, which doesn't sound like anything in the rest of the Incident suite at all. It comes very much as a coda. Like the suite almost comes to a full stop with Circle of Manias. And then you get this almost like coda with I Drive the Hearse. But it's absolutely wonderful. It's one of my favourite Porcupine Tree pieces, and it's something that they did resurrect when they did their most recent tour, and they actually played I Drive the Hearse live. So then you get like 4 short tracks, which are, to me, almost sort of bonus tracks. When you get the CD, they're actually on a separate disc, and they don't need to be, like time-wise, they would have fit onto one disc with the Incident, but they put them on a separate disc, and that makes me feel very much like they are bonus tracks. And I like Flicker and I like Black Dahlia. I'm not a big fan of Bonnie the Cat, but and Remember Me Lover is all right, but again, I think it could have used a little bit of editing. But I like this album quite a bit. I like it more than I thought I did. I've been listening to the whole Porcupine Tree catalogue in the car to get prepared for this show, and I definitely like this album better than I remember liking it. But it's still my number 10, and yeah. So my number 9 is going to be their album from 1995, and that is The Sky Moves Sideways. This is a very, very Pink Floyd influenced album, especially the piece that kind of bookends the album. You get The Sky Moves Sideways Phase 1 and The Sky Moves Sideways Phase 2. Has very much, not so much sonically, but very much thematically, it has that sort of Shine On You Crazy Diamond feel of bookending the album. And it has a lot of very David Gilmour-y kind of guitar. I think Steven Wilson is even on record as saying with this album he felt maybe they were pandering a little much to the Pink Floyd crowd, like the Pink Floyd fans and that sort of thing. Still, I love the Sky Moves Sideways phases 1 and 2. They're moody pieces, and they're mostly instrumental with a couple of little verses, much like Shine On You Crazy Diamond. And they're great mood pieces. You get a few shorter songs in the middle with Stars Die, Dislocated Day. Dislocated Day is probably the one track on this album that's a bit more up-tempo, a bit more... some of the early Porcupine Tree, people talk about psychedelia, they talk about progressive rock. What I don't think they talk about is post-punk. And I feel like there is a bit of post-punk in some of this early Porcupine Tree. And I think Dislocated Day, you get a bit of that. The Moon Touches Your Shoulder, again, very, very moody piece. And of course you get the big long improv piece, Moon Loop. Again, sidelong sort of piece, edited down from a 40-minute piece. I actually have a vinyl, white vinyl of the complete Moon Loop jam. And it's wonderful to listen to from time to time, especially if you want to get that sort of, ambient, moody kind of thing going. I like this album a lot. I just like some of these albums a little better. I will say up front, and you'll see this as we get into sort of the higher end of my catalogue, that I tend to like Porcupine Tree when they're a little more song-oriented rather than the big, long, jammy, moody pieces. As much as I like those, I like it when Steven Wilson's writing sort of actual songs a little bit better. So, yeah. At number 8, I'm going to have their most recent album from 2022, and that is Closure Continuation. Now, I actually did in 2022 a review of this album, not one of my more recent 1-minute reviews. It was a much more in-depth review. I will leave a link to that in the description if you want to go and have a check of what I thought of the album at the time. You know, having listened to it a bit more since then, I like this album quite a bit, and I think that it was definitely an improvement on The Incident. I like the fact that they're sort of not doing a concept as such on this album, rather than it's more just a collection of songs, and I like that about this album. And in particular, I like the track Harridan. I like Rat's Return, and the other one that I really like is the closing track, which is Chimera's Wreck. Yeah, really good stuff. It's definitely got that sort of prog metal vibe that their later stuff had, sort of the 2000s Porcupine Tree had. But it's also dipping its toes a bit into the earlier, more atmospheric, more psychedelic Porcupine Tree. And it's a nice, interesting mixture of that. Will we get another Porcupine Tree album after this? I don't know. I mean, me personally, I'm a huge fan of Steven Wilson's solo career, so I'm quite happy for him to just keep doing his solo albums. If he wants to do more Porcupine Tree, I'm there for it, but I'm not one of these people who's like, oh, please, please, please get Porcupine Tree back together, because I love what he's doing in his solo career. I will definitely do, in the next 2 or 3 months, hopefully, I will do a ranking of Steven Wilson's solo career. I'd like the new album to come out so that I can add that to it, but that's due to come out in early 2025. So look out for that. I definitely will be wanting to do studio albums ranked of Steven Wilson's solo albums. Now this next one is one that I actually switched at the very, very last minute. This was actually a step higher. I've brought it down a step lower. Doesn't mean I don't really, really like this album, because I really do. It is their album from 2007, and that is Fear of a Blank Planet. I saw them on the tour for this album. It was an absolutely brilliant show. Loved it to bits. Musically, this album is top-notch. Porcupine Tree. Absolutely love it. You know, Fear of a Blank Planet. My Ashes is a beautiful, moody piece. Anesthetize. Big, long, sidelong epic that's got like these sort of... It's basically in 3 sections. You get this sort of alternative rock slash... I don't know what else you would call it. First section, you get this very much sort of prog metal second section, and then you get this much quieter atmospheric last section. It's much slower, it's beautiful. In the first section, you get an incredible guitar solo from Mr. Alex Lifeson from Rush, which was some of the very first playing of his I heard before I ever did my Bicyclelegs Discovers Rush series. I love Anesthetize. It's absolutely great. Sentimental, Way Out of Here, Sleep Together. There's only 6 tracks on this album. It's a really good album though. The only thing, probably the reason I'm ranking it a little bit lower than some of the other stuff, is because of the theme of the concept of the piece. It's, you know, sort of idea of teenagers and they're withdrawn because of, you know, prescription drugs and being addicted to video games. And I hate to say this, but it has a bit of an old man yells at cloud kind of vibe to me, this concept. You know, kids these days, you know, I feel like, you know, every generation kind of does that. And I don't know, maybe it's because I am the father of a youngster. I mean, my son's 22 now, but when this album came out, he was much, much younger. So I maybe see things differently than Steven Wilson did, because he didn't have kids at the time. He's a stepfather now, and I think maybe he would see things a little differently. But so yeah, I think it's the concept that brings this down for me. But musically, this is like top tier Porcupine Tree, and everything going on from here on out is just, 9 out of 10 or better as far as I'm concerned. My number 6 is one that's really climbed up the rankings as I've been sort of jiggling around my rankings, from my phone to my notebook to doing this show right now. My number 6 is going to be their second album from 1993, and that is Up the Downstair. This is a great album. It's completely left turn from the opening On the Sunday of Life, his debut album. This is where he started to take the band seriously as a concept. I mean, still it's mostly Steven Wilson on his own, but he's getting more song-oriented on this. Yeah, I really, really love this album a lot. So, pieces like Synesthesia and Always Never, Up the Downstair, Not Beautiful Anymore. Yeah. I really, really like this album a lot. It's definitely got that psychedelic feel, but it's starting to get into that kind of Floydy area without sort of going as overtly as Sky Moves Sideways does. I feel like it's a perfect balance of that really early Porcupine Tree and those Porcupine Tree sounds that they were doing. Again, I say it was mostly Steven Wilson on his own. When the later editions came out, I think it was 2004, and it definitely carries across to this vinyl edition. Steven Wilson got rid of the programmed drums that he'd put on most of these tracks and got Gavin Harrison to play live drum tracks to them. And the funny thing is, I know that Gavin Harrison's live drum tracks on these are objectively better than the drum machine programming that Steven Wilson did on the original tracks. But part of me likes the original drum machine stuff better because it's just the way it was originally intended to be. I don't know. Maybe it's a nostalgia thing. I don't know. But yeah, I mean, they're both great. Whichever version you happen to listen to, they're both really, really good. But they're a little bit different because, as you say, you got programmed drums on one, you got the wonderful Gavin Harrison playing drums on the 2004 remaster. My number 5 is going to be their album from 1996, and that is Signify. I really feel like they're totally found their feet as a functioning band at this stage. This is the first album. Even the Sky Moves Sideways had a couple of tracks where it was just Steven Wilson on his own. But this is, the whole band are playing on this, and the band are Colin Edwin on bass, Richard Barbieri on keyboards and atmospherics and electronics and stuff, and Chris Maitland on drums originally. He get replaced by Gavin Harrison a little later on. But yeah, this is great. You get the sort of wonderful intro Born, Live, Die, and then you get great instrumental Signify. Kind of points to where they would go with the more hard rocking sound. But and then you get Sleep If No Dreaming, which I think is one of the great sort of 90s Porcupine Tree songs. Waiting, phases 1 and 2. Phase 1 is the actual song Waiting, and then phase 2 is sort of like a jam, a bit of an extended thing on like the last chord of Waiting. It's really good. Sever is great. Every Home is Wired. Intermediate Jesus, it's one of these songs where a lot of these early Porcupine Tree, Steven Wilson would add a lot of found dialogue from, sort of Z-grade movies and, advertising. And in this particular case, we're looking at a sermon given by some sort of evangelical preacher. But yeah, you know, Light Mass Prayers and Dark Matter are great too. Yeah, it's just a wonderful, wonderful album beginning to end. Of that sort of early Porcupine Tree, where it's the psychedelia and the atmospheric stuff, I think this is probably the best one of that sort of early period Porcupine Tree. My number 4 is going to be their album from 1999, and that is Stupid Dream. Now, this is very much, they're getting more song-oriented, you know. Even when in the earlier Porcupine Tree, when they had a lot of songs with lyrics, you would get lyrics for the first sort of few minutes of the song, and then there would be an extended jam at the end, or, you know, extended instrumental part or whatever. This is very much where we're getting tighter songs. We're still getting some great long instrumentals as well, so it's a really good balance. And I think you'll find going forward with the albums that I'm going to be talking about, my 3, 2 and 1, you know, it's sort of that, but even more so. But I love this album to death. You know, it could be top 3 any other day of the week. You know, Even Less, great way to kick the album off. Piano Lessons, one of his great sort of 4-minute pop songs, as it were. Stupid Dream is great. Pure Narcotic. Slave Called Shiver, Don't Hate Me. Beautiful, beautiful song. He would re-record that as a solo track. As I say, solo, I mean as a Steven Wilson track rather than a Porcupine Tree track. But he would get Ninette Tayeb to do like a duet vocal on it with him. Yeah, This Is No Rehearsal is wonderful. It's one of those songs where it starts off quite sort of dreamy and then it gets quite hard rocking in the middle, and I like it when he does that sort of thing. Stranger by the Minute, really, really good. Again, sort of alternative rock sound. Then you get the wonderful Tinto Brass, you know, great instrumental, and Stop Swimming to end the album. I really, really love this album, just beginning to end, you know. These top 4 might all be 10 out of 10 albums for me. I mean, that's a cliche thing to say, but I love these albums so much. My number 3 is going to be their album from 2005, and that is Deadwing. Now, anybody who follows the Burning Shed Twitter account will know that it's sort of like an ongoing running gag about asking for Deadwing on vinyl. They do have it. Go to the store, and if you want to find it, you'll find it. This is such a good album. I mean, the title track, Deadwing, just an absolutely kick-ass opening track. Includes some absolutely wonderful lead guitar from Adrian Belew on it. Love it to death. Shallow, really, really heavy, crunchy rocker. Then you get the absolutely gorgeous, gorgeous Lazarus. One of 2 candidates, I think, for my favourite Porcupine Tree song. There'll be, in my number 1, there'll be a candidate for that as well. And again, it's a case of which day do you ask me as to which one I think is the best Porcupine Tree song. But Lazarus, it's a, you know, it's 4.5-minute concise song, but it's just absolutely gorgeous. Halo, another really crunchy one. Arriving Somewhere But Not Here is like this 12.5-minute mini epic. Absolutely wonderful. Takes you on an absolute journey. Mellotron Scratch is great. Open Car is a Porcupine Tree classic. Start of Something Beautiful is great. Half Arm Shattering. So-Called Friend, Half Light. On the CD, the only thing I might have the minorest of quibbles with is on the CD you get a re-recording of a song from an album that we're going to talk about when we get to my number 1. Is a song called She's Moved On. And it just seems a little pointless because it sounds almost exactly like the version on Lightbulb Sun, but I don't know why they re-recorded it for Deadwing as to put as like a hidden track on the CD, but there you have it. I mean, but the album itself, just beginning to end, absolutely brilliant. I love Deadwing to death. I just love these other two albums. Tiniest bit better. And in the case of my number two, it may well be a bit of a nostalgia thing, because my number two is In Absentia from 2002. And the nostalgia thing for me is that this was where I got onto the Porcupine Tree train. In 2002, or it may have been 2003, I had a dear friend I used to work with who unfortunately is no longer with us. A fellow by the name of John Gavin. John, if you're listening from wherever you are, just know that I care about you, and I love what we used to do, because we used to swap CDs with each other and introduce each other to different music. And then in 2004, I think it was, we both travelled to Sydney and went and saw Yes live in concert. So that, you know, great memories for me. But one day John lent me the CD for In Absentia, and it was love at first listen. The first time I listened to this album, I knew I was going to be a fan of this band, because this is just such a good album. You know, and the very first Porcupine Tree song I ever heard, Blackest Eyes, my goodness, what a great song. You know, it starts off this sort of creepy, atmospheric beginning, and then just goes into these absolutely chunky power chords, you know, really metal-y chords, and plays this incredible sort of long riff, and then ends, and then just goes, and then we're into almost acoustic rock territory. And it just introduced me, like, Porcupine Tree could go through all these different genres in one 5-6 minute song. It's just like, wow. Trains, you know, absolutely Porcupine Tree classic. I think, you know, when Porcupine Tree are touring, they have to play Trains. Lips of Ashes, Sound of Muzak. Great song. Gravity Eyelids. Beautiful, creepy song. I love the atmospherics of that. Really sort of gothic and wonderful. Wedding Nails, great up-tempo, heavy instrumental track. Really love it. The Creator Has a Master tape is just, again, really metally and great, but then also, and can I tell you something? And these sort of 3-4 top albums of mine have something absolutely in common, and that is, on all of them, Colin Edwin, the bass player, he is a beast on these albums. Absolute beast on these albums. You know, and nowhere more than The Creator Has a Master tape. I mean, wow. You know, Heart Attack and a Lay-By, Strip the Soul. Again, we're getting into that really crunchy metal sort of sound. And then you get this beautiful piano ballad to end the album, Collapse the Light into Earth. What a journey this album takes you on. I mean, it's no surprise that the very first time I listened to this album, I was instantly hooked. And I knew I had to collect this band and be a fan and go and see them in concert when I had the chance and all that sort of thing. So, yeah, just incredible album. Could so easily have been my number one. And ask me on another day and it may very well be. But as it stands, it's my number two today, and my number one, as I've kind of already alluded to, is Lightbulb Sun from 2000, the album immediately before In Absentia. Now this is before they went sort of full prog metal, although you get little tastes of that, especially on the title track, which is the other contender that I was talking about for my absolute favourite Porcupine Tree song. I love Lightbulb Sun. What a great song. And then you get this beautiful, again, these piano ballads that Steven Wilson would do. How is your life today? You get the wonderful 4 chords that made a million with really sort of satirical lyrics, you know, about sort of success in the music business and that sort of thing. Kind of like Piano Lessons on Stupid Dream is also that sort of theme lyrically. Then you get She's Moved On. I mean, the 2 versions between this and the one as a hidden track on Deadwing, as I say, they're almost identical, but I'm probably going to give it to the original just because it's the original. Then you get the incredible Last Chance to Evacuate Planet Earth Before It Is Recycled, which has, you know, again, he's delving into those, you know, found dialogue sort of tapes and that sort of thing. And this time it's, you know, the leader of Heaven's Gate, I think his name was Doe. And, you know, it was one of the last tapes he made before they all sort of committed mass suicide, which is, you know, obviously a terrible tragedy. But, yeah, I mean, just absolutely brilliant track. The Rest Will Flow is really, really beautiful. Hate Song, again, Colin Edwin is a beast on this song. Just a great song, and I just love the idea of the lyric that rather than being a love song, it's a hate song, you know. I think it has a line in it that goes, you know, I hope when you hear this, you'll want to sue. Which I love that. That line tickles me for some reason. Where Would We Be is great. Russia on Ice is the big epic track on this. It starts off with this lovely atmospheric sort of vocal section, and then it just goes into this long instrumental section where it's by turns atmospheric and then very crunchy again, giving you a bit of a taste of what was to come on the next few albums as far as sort of getting into prog metal and that sort of thing. And then, you know, the main album ends with the rather heartbreaking Feel So Low. You know, if you listen to some of the lyrics on this album and on Stupid Dream, I feel like Steven Wilson was going through a bit of a difficult period. He was going a bit of an emo sort of phase, you know, lyrically, not musically. And, you know, I can kind of identify with that, you know, because I was probably in a similar headspace at once upon a time. So, yeah, I mean, it's beautiful but heartbreaking at the same time. Feel So Low. So there you have it. That is my Porcupine Tree ranking. Going back from number 1 to number 11, we have at number 1, Lightbulb Sun. At number 2, In Absentia. At number 3, Deadwing. At number 4, Stupid Dream. At number 5, Signify. At number 6, Up the Downstair. At number 7, Fear of a Blank Planet. At number 8, Closure Continuation. At number 9, The Sky Moves Sideways. At number 10, The Incident. And at number 11, still an album I like a whole heap, On the Sunday of Life. So there you have it. That is my Porcupine Tree ranking. Please let me know in the comments what your Porcupine Tree ranking is. If you want to rank the whole catalogue, that'd be great. If you just want to give me a top 5 or a top 3, that'd be wonderful too. Tell me where you agree with me. Tell me where you disagree with me, because I know that everybody hears these albums differently, and some people are going to have some of my sort of bottom half very much in their top half and vice versa. And that's great. I love the discussion. As I say, with this catalogue, there's definitely no right or wrong answer, I don't think. I think all of these albums could be your favourite, depending on how you sort of like, what you like best about Porcupine Tree. Please do like, share and subscribe. It really does help the channel out. If you're new to the channel, please have a look at some of my other videos. I have everything playlisted, so if you want to see some of my other studio albums ranked shows, I have a playlist for those. If you want to see some of my reviews from 2022, I have a playlist for those. If you want to see my appearances on other people's channels, I also have a playlist for those. If you want to follow me on social media, I'm at bicyclelegs on Instagram, Twitter, and a bunch of other places. I also have a dedicated bicyclelegs Facebook page. Links are all in the doobly-doo. Please do give those all a follow and join in the conversation. I'd really love to have you there. Thank you very much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.